Hey everybody. So I've been told a few times that I should make some videos, and considering how many people I see make videos about fixing cars, I would do it myself. So backstory is my dad has been wanting a Porsche Panamera for years now, and he's finally in a position to get one. He's getting rid of his Tahoe. It's a piece of crap. He keeps having problems with it. So he wanted a Porsche. Ended up looking for him for one at auction. He ended up buying this one, which is a 2014 Porsche Panamera S, two-wheel drive, just a rear-wheel drive car. It's got some interesting features on it, like the fact that customer states, from accident, like the damage. Sorry, I'm using my facial camera, so everything's going to be backwards in writing. But that totally makes sense. But here's the main damage that we got. Really not much at all. No quarter panel damage, no sheet metal damage. We've got a little bit of a bend down here, like right where the crash bar attaches to. But I'm talking, it's going to be one of those that I literally can hook a strap up to that and straighten it out. So it's not into the actual unibody, it's just the sheet metal there. Left muffler tips are broken, bent, destroyed, however you want to phrase it. Kind of can tell there that it's a little bit foobar. And then obviously the heat shield is also foobar as well. So this went to the body shop. The body shop literally was like, okay, we're gonna sit down and do an estimate on this car. And I don't know how they totaled it, to be honest with you. It's a $45,000 car, and even calling Porsche for parts, the major parts that I know that it needs, which is a tub. You've got like a trunk tub in here that holds the battery and all the modules and all this fancy stuff. It's kind of broken, but like I said again, none of the sheet metal's broken. So, and then you've got this module as well. But that's pretty much it. So, that's the only stuff in here. And then they're saying like to replace the trunk latch, and the air tank for the air compressor, that stuff. Like, okay, fine. But the thing is, I just don't understand where the cost came in that totaled this car, because the trunk pan, I don't have an account with Porsche, nothing special, just called in saying, hey, how much you guys want for, these individual parts. And the pan, the tub, whatever you want to call it, is only $500. That module, it's only like $400. The most expensive part is actually the muffler. The muffler is $1,200, and then the tips, they sell you individually, of course. They are $650 for repair. So, like, I can see that, and then you get into a bumper and a crash bar, and like I can see how it'd get up to probably about a $10,000 repair, with paint and everything, and then they're upcharged. But still, I fail to see where it comes into even close to half the damage. But a lot of people don't understand this, and I guarantee you I probably get flack for saying this. People will be like, you're full of shit or whatever. But, excuse my language there. Different companies, different insurance companies will total vehicles for different reasons. So you'll have companies that will try to keep it not totaled, as much as they possibly can. And they'll actually fix the car if you want them to. Other ones will literally fight to total it. Body shops also like to try to get the car's values, or should I say get the estimated repair as close as they possibly can to the car's total out value, so they get the most money. This car in particular, $45,000, estimate. Like I said, I fail to see how it would be more than about 10 grand to fix it. And I mean, I think that's being pretty generous. The parts that I've already said I mean, you're looking at, I already did the math, it's like $2,000. The only things that I didn't count in that they want to replace as well was the latch, which the hatch has no damage, so I don't understand why they want to replace it. The latch and then the tank. But considering the compressor is only about $1,500 to $2,000 from Porsche, I don't see why the tank would be super expensive. I'm not looking at it because whenever I looked at this tank and they want to replace it, it's kind of the same thing as the latch. There's no damage on it. The car was hit in the left-hand bottom, and that's what broke the tub. The damage didn't even hit the tank, so it's super confusing. And you would look at it and be like, okay, why do they want to do this? Well, there's two factors that come into play. One is the fact of the owner. If the owner sits down, you know, it is a Porsche. It's only got 35,000 miles on it. The owner is probably going to come in and be like, I don't want the car anymore. I don't feel safe in it, or the resale value has been destroyed on it, so I don't want it. So the customer can literally sit there and tell the insurance company that, hey, I don't want this car anymore. I don't feel safe in it, or whatever, because it's been in an accident. And you can go through there that way. And these guys can literally total out a car for as much as 20 to 25% of a car's value, just because the owner doesn't want it. I mean, if it's like a minor bump, then less than this, like you get a scuff on your bumper, then that's not going to happen. They're not going to do that for you unless you've got some car that's only worth like $3,000. So, but then on the other hand, you can also get the insurance company to where they legally have to after about 75%. Now, this varies state by state. Different companies are different ways. Obviously I don't have policies and I haven't worked in insurance, but I have fixed some really, really minor accident stuff. I mean, I'm talking, I've bought, $5,000 Subarus that had a ball joint failure and I had to replace a lower ball joint and axle, and that's it. It was $200. $200 for brand new parts, and that was it. And then there was a scratch on the bumper. So I failed to see how that was a total, but it was. So I just did an Escape here recently where it had a rusted out subframe. And it was actually a recall that Ford did back in the early 2000s, and the car only had 80,000 miles on it. The rest of the car amazingly wasn't rotted out, which was super confusing to me. Same deal. Subframe, axle, done. I went through and I fixed a lot of the little things, but that wasn't stuff that would have totaled it. I mean, like I changed a coil pack and I checked, I changed the oil pan gasket because it had a leak, just stuff like that. And it ended up only costing me like $150 for the parts because the subframe was only $50 used, and it even came with a new power steering rack and all this other stuff from the junkyard. So, but getting back to this car, I try to fill a little bit more information on this car in particular, because that's what this video is actually about. But just trying to give a background, I've been working on cars for about 15 years. I've been fixing cars with mostly minor body damage for probably about 5 or 6. I am not a body guy by any means. I've done some body work. I'm learning as I go. So I'm like a lot of you guys that want to do this stuff. So I sit and spend hours on YouTube and spend hours on Google, just searching and searching and searching for, hey, how do I do this and how do I do that? But I'm also not your backyard mechanic, as you would normally call it, although I do technically work in a backyard. So, because I've got a C6 Corvette over there that I'm also fixing, and then you've got an SVT Focus on the trailer that's a parts car, and then I part out Mazda Speeds for a living. So, and then I've got this BMW here that's probably going to be one of the bigger repairs that I've done in a while, because I actually have to replace the fender apron on it. Most of you would probably say, that's trash, that's junk, I would never sell that, the suspension's probably damaged, the wheels are damaged, or whatever. I get that all the time, and I literally laugh at people, because if you've never worked on a car that's been in an accident, you don't understand, one, how energy can travel, how the frame is designed to transfer the energy, and where the energy is actually going to go to. So, for example, this 330, obviously wrecked in the front. It's only got 80,000 miles. That's the reason why I did it. It's also a manual. And it's a CI, so it's actually kind of sought after. And that's the main reason why I want to fix it. But it's just an apron. It's not the frame rail. It hit above the frame rail. The frame rail's fine. The strut tower's fine. I mean, obviously I haven't put on an alignment machine or anything, but you can look and see the strut towers are super strong. The only way that you're going to get damage in that strut tower, you're going to take damage in that strut tower and you're going to take it in the frame rail. Now, that's not a blanket statement. You can have it happen. You know, don't take what I say to heart, but you have to use common sense in a lot of this stuff. You know, you have to realize that, hey, where did this get hit? You know, how did it get hit? This car hit a truck. You know, you can tell by the way it got hit. It went underneath, it hit a truck, and it took the whole front end out. So I've got to do radiator. I've even got to take the valve cover and the vanos off of it because the vanos got cracked, which is awesome. But, you know, part of me has just wanted to part it out, but the other part of me is like, no, I want to fix it because I like challenging myself with some of this stuff that isn't worth it. By the way, I only got that car for $300, $400. So what am I going to lose? I mean, the motor's worth $1,000. You know, going on from there, and then we've got the fleet up the hill. So I've got an NC Miata, I've got my Fox Body Mustang, I've got a Fiesta, and then I've got the girlfriend's Indy, and then I've got another Miata. So the top one I bought in Maine, clean title car, bad motor. I put a 2.5 swap in it, and 30,000 miles on the motor, made it 2,000 miles, and then the motor blew up. It was awesome. So I got to do it again. And it literally was just a rod failure. Just put cams in it and all this stuff. Cylinder 4 rod through. Only thing I can come up with is that there was a microfracture in the rod and it was a casting defect. But I haven't been inside of it. It is also a, you know, stock motor, and I was revving it to 7,000 RPMs. You pay to play. We'll just go with that. Fiesta was wrecked 3 years ago. I fixed the whole front end. It was on the frame machine, had to straighten everything. Rebuilt title. Fox Body was actually my first car in high school. It's now got a 2.3 EcoBoost swap, which I'm lovely dealing with some check engine lights on the control pack on it that I cannot figure out for the life of me because everything I've looked up and researched and talked to Ford Performance, who is being very, very slow to respond, they can't tell me anything, but I won't get into that. That Miata was hit in the front, subframe swap, both fenders, front bumper, headlight repaired. Didn't make it into the frame rails or anything like that. It was hit low, but it was still a lot of work. I did have to replace a piece of sheet metal where the tire had gotten stuffed up into the wheel arch. So if you can't tell, I like Fords and Mazdas mainly. The Corvette is actually my first Chevy. I've wanted a Corvette forever, and I'm probably just going to end up selling this car because I want a coupe. I don't want a convertible, even though that car in particular has or had a supercharger, is cammed, has Cook's headers, has a balancer and underdrive pulleys and everything like that for the supercharger, meth injection, boosted pump, like all that. It's been gone through. There's a Vengeance Racing in Mooresville, North Carolina now. They did a lot of the work to that car. Apparently, this is the third time it's been wrecked. But it was actually pretty straight car. I just bought the bumper, and I've got the fenders actually in the back of my truck over the weekend. But they drove it through a cornfield. It had 2 ears of corn in the car. So I'm assuming that they had the top up and the windows down. That's the only thing I can think. Windshield broken, hood fine, headlights were gone, bumper gone, fenders gone. So the only thing I can assume is that they took them off when they pulled a supercharger because they were damaged. I have no idea. Radiator AC condenser were bent but not destroyed. Lower radiator support was ripped off, so I had to replace that, or have to replace that. I mean, this is the fan right here on the ground from the car, and it's fine. So doors are fine. Everything else is fine. The fun thing is you know, you just get your Corvette tax. Everything's expensive. New windshield for this car. It's a Z71 package car. It's $700. It's amazing. So, you know, I'm finally starting to deal with some of this expensive stuff, but I've still got some of that old kind of nifty stuff too. 1986 Thunderbird Turbo Coupe was sitting under a tree for 20 to 22 years. The guy I got it from bought it in 1988, paid it off, drove it until around 97, 98, and then parked it one day. Just didn't drive it anymore. Completely straight car. It's got no rust in it. It does have 2 spots of rot. There is a difference. In the door and in the trunk lid where water just sat. So the difference between rust and rot is the fact that whenever you have rust is kind of like when you have a car up north that is like salt and gets salt on it, and it starts corroding, and wheel arches and stuff like that. Rot is when you have water get in and just sit there for years. So it's rotting from like the inside out because you have a leak, which is what happened to this car. Water got into the door, sat in the bottom of the door, and it rotted out through the top down. So, and then the same thing to the trunk. It got water in the trunk lid, and then it just rotted. But the trunk is actually not really needed because it's so small, but that's it. You know, everything else, I mean, I've got more stuff than that. Race cars that I'm building, things like that. Race cars. So, but yeah, this Porsche is for my dad. He lives in California. I'm in South Carolina, so it's going to be one of those affairs that it gets shipped out, or I drive it and just visit and fly back, whatever. You know, and I'll keep some updates, because I've got to take this pan out here, and this pan is actually just glued in. It's, whenever they took it out of the junkyard, I was actually watching them take it out. It's not going to be one of those fun things, but they were also trying not to break the pan that I got from the junkyard. So I'm going to have to sit down, and I'm probably just actually going to cut this pan out. And then I'm going to go through and actually try to get this out, because the problems that they were having was actually getting this lip here, and then like over here in the corners. So like right in here. But if you notice, mine's actually broken. So I'm probably just going to take it and just take from where it's cracked here and just zip it all the way across and just cut it out. Get the wiring out, and then I'll just go in and I'll actually get the, get that section out, you know, cut out all the rubber. And as far as I understand, it's actually just held in with window weld, or a very similar type of adhesive to window weld. So that's probably what's going to go in it, because it literally just slides and it just sits there. So, and if you know anything about window weld, it is a super thick and hard to work with adhesive, basically. That is a pain in the butt. Getting it out, especially when it's cold, is terrible. Usually you have to heat it up. They had to heat it up to get the one out of that car. That's why whenever you have all these windshield guys that come out and do your windows, they have like special tools to remove this stuff. Especially if you've ever, you know, had Safe Light and come out and fix your car. They have some really expensive stuff, and it will cut everything. It'll cut your dash out. I've talked to multiple of them where they said that if they use the wrong material in their like wire, instead of actual wire, they actually use a cord usually. The wire though will literally cut through their dash, or the pinch welds like underneath their windows, and then you have to go fix it. So people get pissed off. But you know, yeah, it's not fun. If you ever have to take a window out or something like that, that is the one thing that if you're trying to save the glass, if you're going to a junkyard and taking the window out, you can try. You're probably going to break the first couple until you finally get one out, because it's that much of a pain in the butt. Try to go in the summertime if you can, or like whenever the sun is just baking the window and it makes it warmer, because then it'll be softer. But if you're taking one out of your own car, and like I've got to take the rear window out of my Mustang, be super careful with it, and you're probably going to break your first one or two, because it's glass. It's actually pretty strong, but the problem is when you get to like towards the end, what you'd end up doing is you start prying on the window and you don't realize it, and then that pry force actually cracks the window or causes it to explode if it's tempered glass. So any of your windows, like this back glass here on this Panamera, even though it's Porsche, still tempered glass. The only glass on your car that usually is like safety glass is the front glass. That is, you know, it's got the pieces of basically a polymer or a plastic that kind of lines it to keep it from like shattering in your face. So that's why, you know, actually I should probably use the Corvette for this one. It would be a better idea because it's broken. So this one obviously got hit pretty good. You can see it's covered up, but you know, it's still intact. It's not falling into your face. There's something holding it together. Now, on the other hand, you go to this SVT Focus that's a parts car, you'll notice that there's no quarter window here. Tempered glass, it explodes. I'm jumping all over the place. This is kind of just like an intro video to me. But yeah, so I mean, this is the gist of what I do. I do a lot of stuff. I don't ever stop. I constantly sell parts and ship parts out. So I'm always busy. Always busy doing something for fixing a car or selling parts for a car. Hoping to have this Porsche up and running and done in the next couple weeks, and it'll probably go to my body shop buddy. He does a lot of the painting and stuff that I need because I don't have a booth. I don't have anywhere enclosed. I work outside 99% of the time. So I don't have any of that really nice equipment. I mean, I've got an air compressor, I've got stuff like that, but I don't have a good enough setup right now to actually do it properly in the way that I know A, my father would want, and B, if I was selling something, how somebody who's buying the car would want. Maybe I would be okay with it. You know, I've got some cars that are like my Fiesta. It got repainted and I didn't get it blended into the fenders. And for people that don't know what blending is when you paint a body panel, your car's sat in the sun for a year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. The paint will fade. So it's really bad on silvers, usually. That's the ones that really come out the most, that you see the difference. But so like if you have a car that you need to spray the front bumper on, like this one, you'll see that on the bottom down here, the forklift operator at Copart destroyed the bumper. Well, didn't destroy it, but damaged it pretty damn good. Damaged it enough that I'm going to have to get it fixed. It's going to have to get repainted, all that stuff. You know, but anyway, so I have to get it painted, right? I have to get the rear bumper painted. If I just paint those body panels and put them on, you end up with a color mismatch. And the best way to show that is my Fiesta, which I got done, I fixed it 3 years ago. You know, I've been driving it for 3 years. I've put like 30,000 miles on it. It's been great. Minus some stupid little nuance issues. But you'll kind of notice here how it's a little bit darker. It may not show up on this camera, but it's a little bit darker on the bumper than it is on the fender. Just ever so slightly. Now, it'd be more dramatic if you looked at it in person, and most people won't even notice it until I point it out. But I know it's there, and it bugs me. And when you go buy a car, what are you looking for? Every little itsy-bitsy problem. Why? Because you're trying to haggle. I know, I sell cars, I get it all the time, and one of the things that frustrates me the most is when people will literally sit there and haggle with me. They're like, well, you take this much, and then they come look at the car, and then they try to rehaggle. Don't do that. We get pissed off. Come look at the car. If you're interested, ask them, are you open to offers? And then see, like, try to get a gauge of how, if they're going to be in your realm of what you think. If they're going to be in your realm of what you think, then go look at the car. I can understand if you got to drive 6 hours, but if you're going to drive 6 hours, you need to understand that, one, don't expect them to drop the price anymore if you didn't, you know, realize issues at the car, even if they told you, or you thought it was going to be better. Expect it to be worse. That's always what you need to do. You need to be expecting worst case scenarios, not best case. You're buying a car that may be 30 years old, like that Fox body over there. Worst case scenarios. You know, is it going to have a bad motor? Whatever. Or let's just say, hey, you know, it does run and drive. I've seen a video of it. You know that it runs and drives well, or you know that it runs well. What is your next worst case scenario? Okay, does it have rust? Okay, it has rust. He says it has rust. How bad is the rust? Get pictures. Go from there. You can't just say, hey, would you take this, without asking questions. If you don't ask questions and then you get there and it's worse than you thought, it's your fault. It's not the seller's fault, unless they lie to you. So, you know, but that's the same way as this. You know, when you buy an auction car, expect the worst. You see the damage. Like whenever I saw this car, rear bumper, crash bar, muffler. I knew that was what was the problem. I didn't know what else, but I was like, okay, I know that there's probably going to be some other stuff. I looked up the parts that I knew. I didn't see taillights in the photo. The taillights did come with the car. The car was loaded full of all the old parts. I just filled up the E30 or E46, the 330 with all the parts, just so that way they're out of the way and I can use them and they stay out of the weather. I tend to do stuff like that because the seats on that thing are kind of, it's still a 20-year-old car almost. So the seats are still kind of hard. But I just do that instead of putting it in like the shed or whatever, because then it gets in the way in the shed and I don't like leaving it outside because then it'll get blown away or whatever. But, so I didn't expect taillights to come with this car. They're $500 for a set. You know, so I factor that into the price. Worst case scenarios. What else? I kind of expected some other damage at the bottom. I just didn't know what. So I figured, I did the math on everything that I said, and I was like, okay, so it's going to be probably $2,500 to fix everything. And then I added, I was like, you know, for the other stuff that I don't need, I'm going to add another $2,500. I'm just going to double it. That way, worst case scenario, you don't overreach. So if you're like, okay, it's got this, 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 and this, and it's $2,500, you can factor that in your budget, but double it, and then you know you're not going to go over budget. Now, you will get those rare occasions where you buy a car, like that Escape that I was talking about. I thought it was another situation with, like, that Subaru that I had done previously, and I thought it was just a ball joint. Where you get it, and then you realize that, oh, crap, it's not this that it is, it's this other thing. The part's not expensive, but you've got more labor involved. So, you can't be mad at the auctions. They're just taking photos, and doing all this stuff. But I mean, that's still not a blanket statement, because I've had stuff that they've told me was a run and drive, and the frames were rotted in half, and I was like, how is this a run and drive? And they're like, well, it ran and drove when it came in. And be like, that's, I won't get into that, because that's just a difference in lot numbers and everything. So, you know, and then I've had my first F-250 that I bought, they said was a run and drive. I don't know how, because the key that came with it didn't work with the truck. So, you know, you get those problems. This car is a run and drive, but every car you're probably going to buy from auction is actually going to be, expect the battery. You know, expect to have to replace the battery, because, for example, this battery, which I haven't really been able to get to try to come back yet because it's dead. Say hello to Sebastian. My charger's broken. I'm going to have to buy another one, which is awesome. But the battery's only got 3 volts in it right now, and I don't expect it to come back. So I put it on the charger. I got my charger to work for a night, and then it stopped charging, and it got it up to like 9, and it hasn't, you know, that was about it. So I don't think it's going to come back. So always expect a battery, because what they do is whenever they go to auction, they leave the keys in the car. You have push button start, the car's always looking for the keys. It knows the keys are there, so it just slowly drains the battery. Or like this car, it's been sitting since the beginning of November. It's now the middle of February. So it was sitting there for 2 months, or 2 months, what am I talking about? Sitting there for 3.5 months. So you end up having this issue where it's just this, you leave any car sitting for 3.5 months without going to it, the battery's probably going to be low or dead. Because you have a little bit of a draw on the system at all times. You've got what we call keep alive memory in the ECU, or you have like constant power going to certain things. Best case scenario, like your ignition switch. Your ignition always has power, right? When you turn the key, it's so that way everything can be powered on. So you've got power there. You've got power at the headlight switch, so that way even if you turn the headlight switch on when the car is off, it still powers it. So you have power going, and there are some circuits that are completed because they have to be grounded. So you just have these little things, and I'm just trying to give like ideas. I know that this isn't an exact science, just that it's going to kill batteries. Just expect it. Every car's a little bit different, so if you're going to go buy a car, look up how expensive the batteries are. You know, like one of the crazy things is if you have like a Honda Civic with a 51R battery like this one, they're actually expensive. They're like $200 for those. And then if you have some normal cars like my old F-250, I literally could go to Walmart and I could pick up, you know, two batteries for that thing for $100 because they were just the cheapies. And the crazy thing is like even this Porsche, like I don't know what the factory battery is, but I can get a diehard battery for $180. So it's not terrible, but it's something that you should always factor in. If you don't have to replace it, guess what? You saved money. So it's always better to factor in these costs beforehand. If you don't have your own truck and trailer, you have to transport it, even if it's across town. So I live, like I said, in South Carolina, but I live just south of Charlotte. So I can buy cars in Charlotte all the time, but if I didn't have my own truck and trailer, you're going to spend at least $100 to $150 to move it just that short of a distance. So if you get to like the 4-hour limit, like if I bought something from Atlanta, that's about 4 hours for me. You're looking at about $250 to $450, depending on costs of fuel and what day of the week it is, and if who's there and how busy they are. So you have to start thinking about everything, and you have to think about costs all the time. If you don't think about cost all the time, don't buy a car. If you can't put your brain into that concept of, hey, I've got this much to spend and I need to think about A through Z, and you're literally only thinking, I like this car, I only see a bumper, you're going to be really disappointed when you get the car and you realize it needs another $4,000 worth of work, and you forgot about the $500 you would need for transporting it, and then the battery, and then just this little nickel and dime stuff. It adds up really, really, really fast. You end up getting to the point of where you need, $5,000-$10,000 more than what you expected for, like, this car. This car was 17, and the place that I bought the tub from yesterday told me that, oh, well, we've got this one, which was a 10 base model car. They're like, yeah, we bought this one for $5,000, and I'm like, awesome. It's a base model car. It's also a 2010. So why should I be excited for you that you only spent $5,000? And then they're like, oh, we've got a Panamera S too. And they're like, we only spent $9,000 on that one. And I'm like, okay, what's wrong with it? And they're like, it's a flood car. That's why. It's a flood car. You used to say European car with a flood. A lot of people are going to get afraid of all the electronic modules that they're going to have to replace. And I have bought flood cars, and mine actually weren't that bad. My brother has one. It's been a pain in the butt. So it depends on the differences in flood vehicles. So freshwater flood, not as bad as saltwater flood. Saltwater flood, stay away. That salt, it's literally going to get in all the connectors and everything, and you're going to have corrosion everywhere. Unless you're taking it and you're replacing every harness, I would say no. Freshwater, not so bad. As long as it's been dried out, it's been aired out, a lot of times you're okay. You still have to worry about hydrolocking the engine, changing all the fluids, making sure that stuff's okay, but most of the time the harnesses and all that stuff are pretty well isolated from moisture, just because they have to be. Now, standing water for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time, obviously not good. But like, let's say the one car that I'm thinking of, I bought from Houston, and it was Hurricane Harvey car. The water level literally got up to the bottom of the door, below the seat, and it was a flood car, right? I get the car for $300. There were so many cars down there, nobody was really buying these things. Had a bad motor that had hydrolocked, it sucked water in through the intake. Car had an aftermarket intake that was down low in the car, and they sucked water in. So get the car, it kind of sounds musky, but it's not mildewy, moldy, nothing like that. And I end up changing the motor, I built a motor myself and put it in there, and I drove the car for 2 years, and I traded it to a guy in Kansas. Actually, I drove out to Kansas and I traded him 2 cars my way, plus some cash my way, for this one car because of how much money I had in it. And he still has not had any electrical problems. So that's just one of those situations. It's better to play it safe. But like these people with the Panamera, it's just like when you get into the electronic modules, it just gets expensive. So, and I also don't know the miles that they had on their car. This car's a run and drive. It has very minimal damage, as you can tell. And I know a lot of people will look at these videos and probably be like, wow, that's really bad. That's total. That's screwed. I would never trust that. And I guarantee you, you're probably one of them. And that's the people that I laugh at, because they don't realize how easy it is to fix something. It's no different than if you have to go fix an engine. Sometimes replacing an engine is more expensive. So, but anyway, I thought I'd give you guys a background check and go from there. So, look for the next video.